Hello, this is the last video for our day 0 Python Programming Bootcamp 3.0. So, I've shown you the command prompt interface, the graphic user interface. I've shown you the Python interpreter and how it works. I've shown you the IDLE and how it's similar to the Python interpreter, but then gives you the advantage of writing your code into a Python file and sharing with friends or running it later on. But now I'm going to show you a great similarity between the IDLE and our an IDE that we'll be using. So most programmers use an IDE to help them write their code much better and faster. And I know most of you have heard of Visual Studio Code. Yes, that is the IDE we are going to be using for this course. But before then, let us take a look from here. So let me open my Python IDLE, and when I go to file, I go to open, or let me go to recent files. So from recent files, the one I just created is this. So as you can see, I have opened the test.py file with my IDE, and it's quite great. You could see some colors here and there. You could see that the codes are in order, and I can write more codes if I want to. Then I say maybe print, it is great studying with you. Whatever you want to write, as many as possible. And there are a lot of codes and a lot of syntax you need to learn to be proficient enough to develop your own software. So for now, this is the simple code I have written using the IDLE. But then let's see how using the IDE, such as a Visual Studio Code, is very effective. Let me close this. Now let me run this with the so this is my Visual Studio Code, okay, and as you can see, it has a very nice interface. But if you've watched our previous video on how to install Visual Studio Code and how to do the setup, you realize that we already have we've already installed Python. So let me show you. So Python has already been installed. So disable uninstall, switch to pre-release version. So Python has already been installed. If Python hasn't been installed on your Visual Studio Code, this button here will not appear. So if this play button is not appearing over here, then it has to mean that you do not have the extension, the Python extension, to run this application. Okay, so quickly type Python here and you will see this, just like you see the install here. You click on install and wait for it to install. It may take some time depending on the strength of your network, sometimes much longer time, sometimes very short time. So just focus on ensure that Python extension has been installed. Okay, and once that's been installed, now you see that the colors and the syntax will be checked by Visual Studio Code, and the play button will be available here. And once you click on the play button, automatically it opens up the terminal below your code. Okay, and it runs it for you. It says, what is your name? So I enter maybe Kofi, and you realize that, hello Kofi, you are welcome to our Python programming class. It is great studying with you. Then the code ends. So you realize that with the Python with the IDE, such as Visual Studio Code, you don't need to run it in with the interpreter. Once you've installed the extension, it opens up the terminal below it. So if, just in case, let's say I made a mistake here, instead of name I said nay, and I try running it again, Let me just type something, let's say Albert, and it gives me an error. So it tells you trace back file line 3. So go to line 3, there's an error over there. So it's just telling me there's an error on line 3. Okay, let me increase my font size. Let me zoom in and so that you can see. So they're telling me there's an error on line 3, and this makes it easier for you to debug. So you see the result of your code below it, and you can easily make changes. And once I make changes, the name, I bring it back and I run it again, you realize that everything goes as smooth. So everything goes as smooth as expected. And this was the previous error I did before. So with this, you can easily navigate between your code and your outputs. And it really helps in speeding up the process. Also, too, you have to also take note that with the IDE, let me delete the terminal. With the IDE, when you're typing something, let's say print, it gives you a suggestion. So before I even complete my code, I'm having a suggestion, and I press enter and it auto completes for me. And I put it in, says values objects, so it means I have to put in something. So I can put in maybe IDE VS Code, okay, comma, I can put in more and more and more. So it gives me a note, and this note tells you much about the print function. So prints the value to a stream or to system.std out by default. Okay, it separates it by default with a space, it ends it by default with a new line, and so on and so forth. And you can keep on reading. Okay, so the IDE gives you more meaning to whatever you are doing and helps you with autocomplete. So this makes your coding very fast as compared to this, which doesn't really give you the meaning when you're writing your script and doesn't help you enough with some autocomplete features. I don't know if they are going to do it later, but for now, we are going to be using the the IDE, which is we are going to use Visual Studio Code as our IDE throughout the course for our software. So later on, I'll show you how to use some other tools, but for now, let us look at the Explorer. So if you could see here, these are folders. Okay, these are folders. So you can open a folder and see its content here. So let me open um, add a folder to workspace. So I want to add a folder to workspace. I want to open a new folder. So file, open folder. So I open, let's say, my desktop, and I go to uh, projects, the project folder I created, and I say select folder. Okay, then it says save. Okay, let me save this one. Workspace, Python code workspace. Let me save it on my desktop. Okay, so I've opened a new folder, and this new folder is empty. As you can see from here, the folder called projects is empty. There is nothing within it. So through VS Code, okay, through VS Code, we can start with a new file, open a file that already exists, or open a folder, or clone to GitHub, and what have you. But then let us create a new Python file. So this Python file, let us call it day 0 underscore codes dot py. You have to add an extension, and I have my Python file. So I can say print hello world, okay, print hello world, and I have a file for now, and I can use this one to run it and see my results. So it's more or less like everything in one place. You can create your files, write your script, and see the results. And this is mostly the interface we'll be using. You can even create subfolders within it. Let's say this is a subfolder. When you use this one as a subfolder, maybe we call it, let's say, maybe maybe try try folder. So maybe it's a folder for all the codes you are trying them. So once you click here, you can create a sub file inside, and you can say maybe my first try.py, and you can write something, print I new to this, and that could be your code, and you can run it. And when you run it, say I am new to this, and you see the results. Okay, so this folder contains the my first try.py. Okay, and this is the parent folder, which contains a folder called try folder and a Python script called day0 underscore codes. So this is the Explorer. You can create and manage your files here, and here you can write your codes. Okay, one more feature I want to show you is that now we have my first try.py and we have day0 codes. Sometimes you may want to compare the contents of each code. Okay, so since I've opened my first try, okay, I can click on this icon here called split editor. So when I click on it, it splits the editor into two. Let me close the Explorer by clicking here. So it makes a copy of this on this side. Okay, and now I can open this next folder. I can open the zero code on this side. So I see my first try.py on my right side and the zero code on my left side, and I can compare its content and work between the files. You can go ahead and do more splitting, okay, and have 1, 2, 3 splitted codes, okay, and you can work with them anytime, anyhow. You can copy through, you can copy codes and work between them. Okay, so this is a very great IDLE that's going to be helpful throughout this course. Okay, so next will be our day one. So starting tomorrow, we're going to have day one. We're going to have a lot of work to do. We're going to learn about variables and data types, and we'll go deep. We'll dive deep into strings and how to slice, index, and whatever on strings, and some operations on strings. So stay with us and let's have fun together. You can also watch this video on YouTube and make sure to subscribe because more videos will be coming for the next 17 days. Thank you. Bye.